So yeah, we'll start off as we usually do with the market. So another crappy day. Um, Tuesday the market got crushed. Yesterday they tried to get it back, closed well off the highs. Today it's just stunk right from the open. Um, again feels kind of toppy here, but every time it feels toppy, they come back around. Trump did tweet buy the market. I think it was yesterday. So we'll see how that whole indicator works. But yeah, I mean, I basically just be cautious here. Have some hedges, but look for some opportunities to buy some dips on things you like. So I mean, I've got a bunch of hedges, so I did a little bit of dip buying today. And that's about it. I don't know, Dan, you got any market thoughts here?
Can you hear us, Danny?
I know Trump's supposed to talk
Any thoughts,
about,
Dan? Matt,
I
well,
believe it's the health benefits of like Hims. Yeah, like I know GLP-1s are a talking point. I think at 11 today, and then Elon has his $1 trillion Tesla deal. I believe at market close. But that's about it. Everything else, I think, is around Michael Burry saying that we're on a bubble.
Yeah, but I mean, Michael Burry's called 50 of the last two bubbles, so I, I,
before you,
I don't think people put a lot of stock into that
no,
anymore.
yeah, before I introduce our guest, I'm gonna ask you guys a question. So, I used to be a trader, but I'm not really looking at the market every hour like I used to, whatever. So it feels though like if you don't look at the market like every day, you can miss like these life changing moves. Like yesterday, it's up a lot. Yesterday before, it's down a lot. The next week, it's up a ton. Things are just rocking and rolling. How do you respond to that for the regular guy, Matt, who just can't like follow the market every second of every day?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually you're right, which is, I mean, sounds weird coming out of my mouth, but I
Good thing we got the microbiome guy. All
yeah.
right, all
So
right.
yeah, I think you are right about that. I mean, this is a different market. I mean, it goes to what I always talk about themes, where, this market is thematic. It used to be, all right, hey, have some large cap growth, large cap value, small cap, mid cap, US international bonds, call it a day. You don't have to watch it. You know, can you still do that? I mean, yeah. Are your returns going to be mediocre? Probably. If you want to have better than mediocre returns, yeah, you got to be watching it, or you got to be working with an advisor who is.
Got it. Fair enough. All right, so we got Momo Vuyisich on from Viome. They have like a gut intelligence test, and it kind of you take this test, and for like 299 or 279, let's say, it comes back, and it tells you what you can do to fix up your microbiomes. It's a big thing. We can talk about it all day. Momo, why don't you tell us what you got going on, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Yeah. So we actually have far more than just a gut test. So we
Okay.
started our company 9 years ago, and we started with the stool test to identify all the biochemical functions in the stool. But let's back up a little bit. So um, let's talk about what is our mission and goal. So I want everyone to understand that there are hundreds of thousands of people in the world today who are in their 90s who basically have no illnesses of any kind. They're physically fit, mentally fit, cognitively fit, and immunologically fit, right? In their 90s. Of course, in the United States, that's a very, very rare and unusual thing. But in rural areas of many countries, that's a normal thing to see a person who is 90 years old and who is healthy. So the point,
Just to interrupt you real quick, is it a rare thing that Pat looks like he's in his 90s?
if he's 90, he looks great.
Well,
Dude,
no, he's actually 35, but
Oh, I
dude.
see.
Oh my God. All right. Dude, you're
He's
lucky,
aged
man.
well. Well, some cheeses
You're
look
lucky I'm
old,
so good
they
looking,
taste
man.
great.
Right?
Sorry I interrupted you. I
No,
had to
it's
get
okay.
that in.
So really a big takeaway is for people to understand that nature has already figured out how humans can live into their 90s without any pharmaceuticals, without any medical system, without any special drugs or anything like that. Nature has already figured this out. And it's not a matter of luck, it's not a matter of magic or extraterrestrial force or nothing. It's simply a combination of healthy food, healthy oral microbiome, healthy gut microbiome, and healthy human physiology combined with exercise, sleep, and so on. And so um, when you look at those people, you say, many people say, I want that. I want to live into my 90s where I'm capable of doing anything I want. But that's simply not achievable today because people die of so many diseases and have so many chronic diseases. We have an epidemic of chronic diseases. So what Viome is about is understanding what are the hundreds of thousands of pieces of the human physiology that make us tick, make us healthy, and what pieces break down that lead to diseases, and how can we prevent that from happening? So that's sort of a big picture. So in order to do that really, really, really well, you would have to collect samples from every part of the body, including like a kidney biopsy and a liver biopsy every year. And that's not reasonable. So what's reasonable? What's practical? Our customers collect samples that are stool, blood, and saliva. And these three samples contain major, major parts of our physiology, and they can be easily collected at home anywhere in the world. We have more than 500,000 customers in more than 100 countries, and all of these people collected blood, stool, and saliva at home. So you just prick your finger, you collect a little bit of blood, you spit in a tube for saliva, you collect a little pea-sized stool sample. They're all preserved at home, and then they're shipped at room temperature to our labs here in Seattle. And from those three samples, we can basically quantify tens of thousands of parts of our physiology that makes us either healthy or make us sick.
Right.
Cool. So a question that, and I've got a lot of questions.
No.
I mean, this is an area that's near and dear. But one of the things that I think is problematic, and correct me if I'm wrong, is I don't know that we know what a healthy gut biome is supposed to look like
Okay.
because we live in a toxic environment. We've had full spectrum antibiotics since like 1970. So, like, theoretically, like our early ancestors probably had healthy gut biomes. But, how do we know what one is supposed to look like now?
Yeah, great question. Great question. We can spend a lot of time on that topic. Let me summarize what we know today. First of all, I want everyone to understand that we have co-evolved with oral and gut microbiome and vaginal microbiome. We have co-evolved as humans to depend on them for all aspects of healthy physiology. And that means literally from the first diaper, since birth, one of the most important things in life is acquiring a healthy microbiome. And a healthy microbiome is not defined by its composition, it's defined by its functions. So let me tell you about composition versus function and why there's a big difference. If you want to make beer, you need to have a yeast and you need to have the right raw materials, meaning barley. And the yeast will process the barley into beer, into alcohol, using specific biochemistry. Let's just stay at biochemistry. And it's that biochemistry that we have tens of thousands of biochemical reactions in our body performed by the gut microbiome and oral microbiome that maintain our health. So I'll give you two examples that I find very fascinating. One example is in the oral microbiome. As we age, every decade, we lose the ability to control our blood pressure naturally. Our own genes start to fail as we age. But that's where the oral microbiome comes in. Oral microbiome produces a compound called nitrite. So it's a biochemical reaction performed by the oral microbiome called nitrite that lowers our blood pressure naturally. It's a very complex system that we don't need to get into. But the point is, if you've killed off the members of the oral microbiome that make that chemical, then you can have a high blood pressure. And you can kill those microbes either with antibiotics or mouthwash or many other ways.
Right.
So So that biochemical reaction performed by your bacteria in the oral cavity is essential for maintaining healthy blood pressure as we age. The next example I want to give is in the gut microbiome. We all know people who repeatedly get sick. We all know people who, like from COVID or flu. We all know people who got vaccinated with COVID and flu, but yet they get the disease. And then we know people who get sick once from COVID and don't get it again, and the same thing with flu and so on. So why is that? That phenomenon has been known for decades, that vaccines are not 100% effective, and that of 100 people that get a disease, not all of them are protected for life. So here's what happens. We have immune cells that fight COVID virus and influenza virus and so on. They're called T cells. And these T cells exist in two forms. One form rises during the illness and fights off the infection. And if nothing happens after that, those cells die and we lose the memory of that infection, meaning when that virus infects us again, we get sick again. But those cells can transform themselves into a memory T cell, which stays in the bloodstream for decades. That's the lasting memory, right? That's what the immune system is supposed to do. Now, that transformation from these T cells that are killing the virus today to a memory T cell that's going to stay in the bloodstream for decades, that transformation requires a molecule that is made by the gut microbiome. If at the time you're ill or you are vaccinated, if at that time you're not feeding specific members of your gut microbiome with specific nutrients, which are fibers, prebiotics, they will not produce butyrate and you will not remember, your immune system will not remember that illness. So so a big takeaway here is that, and these are just two of hundreds of examples we know and thousands of examples we don't yet know. So this is a very active area of research where we're understanding how the microbiome is actually enabling us to be healthy. And so going back to your question, Matt, what is a healthy microbiome? A healthy microbiome is the one that is actually producing biochemicals that are healthy for us and is not producing biochemicals that are harmful to us, because I gave you two positive examples where the microbiome performs very healthy functions. There are hundreds of examples of microbiome performing harmful functions that make us sick. And so a healthy microbiome would be shifted towards biochemical activities that are healthy for us and away from biochemical activities that are harmful to us.
All right.
I'm going to
That
get
makes
your
a lot of
test
sense.
because I think I have a horrible microbiome, right? Because, like, I've read about tryptophan, tyrosine, ILA. These are all things that should make you feel better. And I feel like I'm missing all of those. So I'm going to do your test just because I've always felt like this way, my whole life. Like, and I feel like I have this anxiety in my stomach. And now the more research I've done on what you guys do, the more I feel like I need what you guys, at least I'm going to give it a shot.
Sure.
Either that or a psychiatrist.
Yeah,
Yeah.
No. Pat, you're on
that's,
the right track.
you know,
You're on the right track.
and
You
also
just need to
I'm
right.
part Native American, right? And I'm not sure if that matters, but I feel like I have this Native American biology where like weird
No.
stuff happens to me. Now,
No, no, it doesn't matter. You're a Homo sapiens. We have done research on very complex physiological features that are involved in blood sugar metabolism, and we've done a study in the United States. We have learned what we learned in the United States, and then we asked, does this work in Japan with completely different genetics, completely different microbiome, completely different foods? And it works exactly the same way in Japan as in the United States, exactly the
right,
same way.
got
And
it.
the only reason or the main reason it works is because our technology is unlike all other microbiome technologies. Our technology measures the functions of the microbiome, not the composition. It doesn't measure who is there. Because if our technology was limited to who is there, it would not work in Japan at all because they have very different microbes from us, very different
Right.
names. But our technology is not focused on the names of the microbes because they're not important. It's the biochemical reactions that they're performing, and that's why it works globally.
Right. Danny,
So,
why don't you jump in here?
why can't 50% of the population process folic acid? Is that part of the microbiome?
That's, I think, what you're referring to is it's not that it can't process, is that it cannot metabolize it properly, and I think I think that's an overstatement, first of all, but that has to do with genetics mostly. That
Yeah, that's a
particular
Gary Brecka thing.
Yeah, that has to do with genetics, but I think that that's yeah.
Like I know
Okay.
I can't. I pretty much eat only a meat diet. If I have carbohydrates, I just fall right asleep. It's like having turkey dinner and you fall right asleep 5 minutes later. It's the same thing. I can't have carbohydrates. It's strictly steak and
So
chicken.
Well,
and
I mean,
and I eat the same way. I mean, I don't eat chicken, but I eat, meat and cheese and the occasional fish. And let me run my theory by you, because some people, like, I don't know about you, but like I run best on just meat. I eat carbohydrates. I don't fall asleep. I just feel like crap. And if I eat like sugar, the next morning, I mean, I feel hungover. I mean, I just feel
yeah,
awful.
yeah,
But other people thrive on carb diets. Some people thrive on vegetarian diets. My guess, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that's differences in gut biome. So, for example, if I eat vegetables, I get tendonitis in my knees. I play basketball three or four times a week. 10 years ago, I thought I was going to have to quit. And that's when I went fully meat based. My knees are fine. 10 years later, it's night and day. But if I go back and eat vegetables and I go out and run around and play basketball, I start to feel it. My guess is there's something missing in my gut biome that takes those plant defense chemicals and
yep,
eats
yep,
them,
yep.
and it goes right into my joints.
Yep. Very possible that you have an oxalate problem. So let's discuss that. So first of all, one major takeaway I would like the audience to get from this is um, I don't think we should be using the terms carbohydrates and vegetables because those are such broad categories that literally for every person there could be a carbohydrate that's super healthy for them and carbohydrates that's very toxic for them, right? And the same thing with vegetables.
I find Twinkies very healthy.
I'm sorry?
I find Twinkies very healthy.
Yeah, exactly. That's
That's
an
why Pat looks like he's 90.
Yeah, that yeah. So let's just do that. And so for you, for example, so yes, plants produce defensive chemicals, and oxalates are one of those. And we have again co-evolved with the microbiome to help us digest food, and one of those functions is to digest oxalates so that they don't enter our bloodstream. And if they do enter our bloodstream, they can go into kidneys and cause kidney stones. And there are other metabolic functions of the microbiome that reduce the potential for gout, for example, that would affect joints, right? And so, if yes, antibiotic use, preservatives in foods, um, multiple bouts of GI distress could cause you to lose those species forever. And that means that you no longer have that help from microbiome. And now you have to avoid those veggies. And as we age, our microbiome changes as well. And so continuous testing needs to take place in order to understand what your microbiome is doing and what it's not doing and adjusting your diet. Now, changing your diet from an omnivorous to something highly restrictive like carnivore diet, what that means is that if you had two or three vegetables that were bothering you, you're now basically removing 100 other vegetables, which might have phenomenal benefits, longevity benefits for you. You're removing all of those because you simply didn't know which three bothered you,
Right.
right? And I
Yep.
think that that's the most common case where you just remove this entire category and you say, okay, I feel better right now. But do you actually feel better long term? I don't know. We're going to have to find that out, right? But
Right. I
there's
could
a
end up
vast,
looking like Pat.
But
right.
wait. But if someone takes your test, you're going to send them a report back that says, Matt, don't eat carrots and don't eat this or
That's
whatever,
exactly
right?
right. That's exactly right. So our test tells every person what plants, what foods they need to be eating a lot of, what foods they need to be eating some of, and what foods they need to avoid. And that's really the key is personalization. Our computers are not aware of ketogenic diet or carnivore diet or vegan diet. They're not aware of that. They don't care about that. They just care about do you have the right functions in your microbiome that will process certain micronutrients into healthy or harmful chemicals. And if they're going to process them into healthy biochemicals, you want to eat those nutrients. And if they're going to process them into harmful chemicals or not remove harmful chemicals from food, you do not want to eat those foods. That's a basic principle.
So why is this stuff not like Trump's new Eat It? Microbiome tests are mandatory for
Big,
America.
big, big pharma.
Is that it?
All of what he's saying is great, but the problem is, if we're all healthy,
Right.
then who needs, all the diabetes drugs? Who needs all the high blood pressure drugs? Who needs all of that stuff? So,
Yeah, Pfizer stock will just
you
go
are
down.
Pfizer's biggest enemy.
Is that what you think, Momo, or what? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't follow politics at all. I live under a rock and sleep well for the last 20 years.
Well, every
Here's,
insurance company then. I mean, Trump
but
insurance company,
here's the thing.
anybody.
So if you enter the microbiome space generally, there's been a lot of contradictory information published. There's still a lot of confusion. We're
I
still
see.
discovering new things every single day. And I would say that the medical system has not been trained to properly understand the functions of the microbiome and how we can harness its power to actually make people's lives better. I think that Viome is the single most important driver of the entire field. And that's because we're using the right technology, we're measuring the right molecules. And so I think that this is still a new field. And just so you guys, I mean, to compare basically things, back in 1870s, when scientists discovered that infectious diseases were actually caused by microorganisms, that was such a novel concept to the medical system. It took the medical system 20 years to recognize that's the case. They were treating people who had infections with mercury because
Right.
that's how they treated infections for decades, right? And
Right.
they rejected this new idea that something that you cannot see with your eye can make you sick. Like that's not possible, right? So I
Right.
think we're in that transition period where there have been a lot of false starts um, due to business focus instead of scientific and physiological focus. And now there's a lot of conflicting information out there. And so, yeah, just, it'll take another 5 to 10 years for this field to really prove itself.
Right.
We are running randomized control trials right now, and that's sort of the absolute gold standard for proving that something works, like an intervention works. And so when we publish these randomized control trials, then I think it's going to add a lot more credibility to the field.
Right. All
Momo, how
right.
much of this
So
is
was that?
genetic?
Go ahead. Sorry.
How much of
Go
this
ahead,
is
Dan.
genetic? How much of this is genetic passed down from
Yeah.
like parent to
So,
child?
if you look at published studies, which have done a very good job of quantifying the genetic contribution to diseases by studying 1,000 pairs of identical genetic twins, right, and the disease burden in those people, the genetic contribution depends on the disease. The average genetic contribution for a chronic disease is in the teens. It's like 15% average, but it ranges from nearly zero to up to 40% for depression, for example. But at most, for the vast majority of chronic diseases, it's 40% genetic contribution at most. But on average, let's call it 15. And so genetics plays a very minor role. And I want everyone to understand that unless someone has an inherited genetic disease that has 100% penetrance, meaning that 100% of the people will get sick, those are rare genetic diseases because they're rare. So for all other diseases, chronic diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and diabetes and heart disease and all that, the even though the genetic contribution is on average 15%, it does not mean that you will get the disease, right? 85% of the people do not get that disease. And so there's a very strong ability to prevent disease even if you have a high genetic risk. And so that's
Right.
really the concept here that if you look at, for example, a rural population of some people, let's say in Greece or Sardinia, you look at their genetics and you say, wow, these guys also have a 15% genetic risk of having a disease, right? But they never developed that disease. If you look at their descendants who live in the cities, they have the same genetic risk, but their actual prevalence of the disease is much higher because they're not doing what their ancestors have been doing. So the main takeaway here is that no matter what your genetic risk is, you don't even need to know it. There are many things you can do in terms of nutrition, exercise, sleep, and Zen that will vastly reduce the risk of any disease. Doesn't matter what it
Right.
is.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to switch up on here for a sec. So obviously you guys have a lot of data. I mean, this feels like that's where the value of this company is long, not the value, but a value for sure, long term, right? So you have AI and sort through all this stuff. You know, is it kind of like the razor blade model? You know, the data is the razor blade,
I mean, look, our 100% focus is to make people feel better and to prevent illness. That's our 100% focus.
right?
That is the number one thing that we've been doing. I've been doing for 15 years, and there are many other aspects of our business that are highly valuable. So yes, let's talk about the data. We have analyzed now more than 1 million samples from 500,000 people from 100 countries. And these samples not only provide us with tens of thousands of biomarkers that are relevant to human health, but the customers and the clinical research participants provide us with rich metadata. So that means their health data, their diet data, their medications, their supplements, their symptoms, all of that. And so we have one big data lake with petascale data about human biology. What's crazy is that 75% of that data is dark matter, meaning nobody in the world knows what it means. We know
Right.
so little about the human biology. And so really we are obviously moving, just a decade ago we would 90% of the data would have been dark matter. So we've moved quite a bit in terms of understanding, but there's still a lot more to understand. And so I just want to say that in terms of the data, the inflection point in my mind is going to come when we apply generative AI to all of our data. So when we build a foundation model of all of our data, smart AI is going to be able to figure out not only what the remaining 75%, what a large proportion of that 75% is doing, but how it's all interconnected and how it's all controlled by nutrition and exercise. And that's
Right.
really going to be a quantum leap in human biology when we apply generative AI to this data set that we have.
I got one more. So is there any like near term thing? Like, I don't know, what's the nearest term solve? Is there something you look at and you say, like, I know you mentioned something
Yeah.
about like, I don't know, I have some notes here, but
Oh no, we have many near-term things.
okay.
Okay,
What would
so
they?
so I'll tell you the most important near-term thing that's happening right now. Are you guys familiar with Grail? No.
No,
Grail is a company that has a blood test that can detect 46 cancers in one test.
Right?
are
Like the
they
Holy
public
Grail?
or are they public or are they private?
They are public. GRAL is the ticker.
Oh, wait a second. Yeah, 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 yeah. I've heard of them.
They've done really well on the market in the last few months. Okay,
I think I
so
was in this at some point, but man, I
See?
missed that move.
Hold on,
you should have
guys.
stayed in it.
All right,
So
hold on. This is the juicy stuff, man.
this is
Yeah,
juicy. Okay,
I was in this name at some point. Damn it.
so this company can detect 46 cancers from a single blood test, okay? They have a foundational limitation in their test. Their test will never be good at detecting early stages of cancer just because of their technology. What we are doing at Viome is a quantum leap over that. We are actually detecting diseases years and decades before they ever set in. And then, very importantly, we tell our customers exactly what to do about it.
That's Grail right there, guys. All right, all right. So that's one. So we're 1 for 1 so far.
So,
How do Momo, how do you compete against like 23andMe and these other companies that also do, they show like genetic markers when you spit in the tube and they tell you who your ancestors are?
I mean, let me ask you that. I mean, we don't compete at all against 23andMe.
Right. Yeah, totally
23andMe's
different story.
foundational concept was that genetics determined diseases, and that's not true. We've now proven that that's not true. And so, when your entire foundational premise of DNA equals disease is wrong, you got nothing, which is why they're not doing well, right? Their entire premise was wrong.
Sure.
So, we don't compete against 23andMe at all.
So I
What
got lost a
about
little bit looking. Oh, go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
yeah, yeah. So what about probiotics?
Okay. What about
So
probiotics?
so I don't take probiotics because it seems to me that again, if we don't know, a couple of things. A, if we don't really know what a healthy gut biome is supposed to be, and the probiotic company doesn't know what my gut biome looks like, how do they know what probiotics I should be taking? Number one. And number two, do they even survive the digestive tract and go into the gut?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
instead, what I do is I eat a lot of fermented stuff. You know, kimchi, sauerkraut, fermented sausage, raw cheese, stuff like that. What do you think? Am I on the right track, or should I
You're
just be taking
absolutely on the right
probiotics?
track. You're absolutely on the right track. So you are taking probiotics in massive amounts. You're just not calling them probiotics, but they are probiotics. They're just not supplements. So in terms of probiotics, let me just summarize my opinion, which is a takeaway, and then we can dive deeper if you guys would like. So the vast majority of probiotics, the vast majority of time, are healthy for humans. We've co-evolved to need them. And I'll give you one example of this right now. The very first thing in human life after birth that is essential for human development is acquisition of bifidobacteria, and specifically Bifidobacterium longum strain infantis. Some people have called it now a species as Bifidobacterium infantis. This bacterium is extremely important for our development. And we can dive deeper into why that is, but it's extremely important. And then we have many others like Bifidobacterium breve that's important for our cognition, and many lactobacilli and so on. So how do you acquire them? You acquire them at birth, presumably. You can also acquire them by eating fermented foods. However, some people don't like kimchi. Some people don't like sauerkraut. Some people don't like cheese or can't have cheese, like I can't. And so probiotics are now widely available to take, and there's nothing wrong with taking supplements in addition to trying as many fermented foods. There's nothing wrong with that. I do both. I ferment my own foods at home. I eat commercially available fermented foods, and I take many probiotics every single day. I don't see anything wrong with that. Now, in terms of their survival, our stomach acid is meant to prevent a large amount of probiotics, bacteria entering from food and just completely changing our gut microbiome all the time. We want the gut microbiome to be very stable. But some of them do come through, first of all, naturally. And second of all, the capsules these days are designed to dissolve really in the small intestine and large intestine, so they bypass the stomach acid. So there's now a much better chance that a microorganism is going to set foot, get a hold in the gut microbiome. Now, what I want to say is that I think one of the major mistakes that people make is that they take probiotics, but then they don't feed them. They don't provide the prebiotics to feed them so that they can colonize. And that's the main problem, is that Americans simply don't consume enough prebiotics. For example, onions, garlic, and sunchokes and artichokes and many other vegetables like legumes, they contain extremely important prebiotics for maintenance of a healthy microbiome and colonization of new strains. And if you don't eat those foods, then you're not going to get a colonization of the microbes.
Wow. Good
Cool.
stuff.
Interesting.
So going back to my example of Bifidobacterium longum and this coevolution of humans and microbes, how does this Bifidobacterium longum take hold in our in babies, infants' microbiome? A significant portion of the calories produced in breast milk by the mother are actually not meant for the baby. The baby does not have the genes to actually digest that food. That significant portion of the calories in the milk, in the breast milk, is specifically targeting these Bifidobacterium longum species to feed them so that they can thrive and they can fight off other infections and they can provide super healthy chemicals that control the physiology of the human body to develop the immune system, to develop the brain, to develop many parts of the body. How cool is that? That's a true symbiosis where the mother specifically feeds specific microbiome strains to protect the baby and enable the baby to develop healthy.
So let me ask you a question. So I just pulled up this chart of Danone, which makes baby food and yogurt and that type of stuff. So it fits into this combo. So what do you think of I drink kefir, right? So what do you think of that? I drink a lot of
Fabulous.
kefir, which people think is weird. Like the only person I know that drinks kefir. And two, what do you think about like something like a Danone or what they're doing? And do you think they could like create food that they can, kind of mass produce to feed the moms, not just baby food, but mom food? Is that such a thing?
I mean, mom food is just a normal, balanced, omnivorous diet that includes plenty of essential amino acids, right? So that the mom can produce protein in the milk and other balanced carbohydrates, including fiber and minerals and vitamins and everything else. There's nothing special about mom food except that we need to ensure that moms get enough essential amino acids and essential fatty acids and so on. But in terms of Danone and all other of these companies, I think they can make very healthy products. And I think that what they're doing nowadays with foods, with baby food, is that they're actually supplementing baby food with human milk oligosaccharides. I'm pretty sure those products exist. And these human milk oligosaccharides are those foods that I mentioned in breast milk that feed specific microorganisms. So they're essential for proper healthy development of a child. And so these products can be super, super healthy, but they can also be obviously unhealthy if these companies add too much sugar. Of course, they
Right.
can be unhealthy. If they add preservatives, they can be very unhealthy. There are still, I go to many other countries and I still see yogurts that are fruit yogurts. So they have a ton of sugar, they have very little fruit, they have a ton of added sugar, and
Right.
they have actual preservatives. And this is a very common theme that I see in foods nowadays where you want to make products shelf stable. So what do? If you keep yogurt on the shelf, it's only really good for 2 or 3 days. If you keep sauerkraut on the shelf, it's only really good for 2 or 3 days. So what do? They ferment them and then they add preservatives. These are your sodium benzoate, your potassium sorbate. They add those preservatives to yogurts and sauerkraut. And now you buy those thinking you're getting probiotics, but it actually
Right.
has the opposite effect because
Yeah.
the preservatives have killed the probiotics. And now you're feeding yourself those preservatives that are killing your own oral microbiome and gut microbiome. So they have a net negative effect on you instead of a net positive effect.
Right.
So these are the kinds of little tricks that people really need to be familiar with and make sure that they read the ingredients list because again, when we talk about yogurts or fermented foods, it's a full spectrum from really healthy for most people to really harmful.
Right.
What
You
what
know,
what do you
oh,
think
go.
about raw milk and raw cheese?
Well, you know, well, raw cheese. I mean, cheese is made with pasteurized milk,
Well, no, no, I mean cheese that's made with unpasteurized milk.
unpasteurized milk. I mean, I think there's a small risk of mycobacterium infection. And in terms of the benefits, it's not clear to me. I've never seen data to show that raw milk or raw milk cheese is any better than pasteurized one. I've never seen data. I'm not saying there isn't such data, but I've never seen them.
Yeah,
And I
I just
normally
ate a big block of raw cheese. That's why I asked.
I mean, look, humans have evolved to eat raw milk and drink raw milk and eat
Soy,
raw
actually.
cheese. And so in general, I don't see a big concern there. But again, there's a small risk of getting an infection by mycobacterium, which can either be a mild or it can wreck your body. It's really up to you. To me, the potential benefit, which I haven't seen, does not outweigh the potential risk. So I think everyone should really weigh the options like what's the upside, what's the downside, right? And in this case, I just don't see the upside, you know, weighing over the downside. So I wouldn't do it.
All right. What
Your
what what
eyes are looking
about?
really red, by the way, Matt. You may want to check
Yeah,
get those
I
checked
mean,
out.
I'm gonna have to leave and go to the bathroom in a minute, guys. Sorry. Um, what about weight loss? Now, I've
Sure.
heard that
Can't help
there
myself.
are specific skinny bacteria and fat bacteria, and that you could put the skinny bacteria into someone who's fat, like Pat, and he would lose a bunch of weight. And you could do the opposite, like guys like me and Dan
Yeah.
are in good
Yeah.
shape.
Yeah.
You give us
Right.
that person
Yeah.
Thanks,
bacteria,
Matt.
and we get
Yeah.
fat.
Yeah.
But
So
Patrick calls me when he's running up his hills all the time.
Dude, I work out every day. I'm still like 15 pounds overweight, man.
so again, if we go to rural
18, sorry.
areas, if we go to rural areas of developing countries, you can see that people are thin. If you look at photos of like human masses back from the 60s and 50s and 40s, what do you see? You see very nicely normal looking people that have a normal BMI, right? And
Right.
today you look at the same photos of beaches and squares and so on, just of not large number of people, and most people are large, right?
You look at
So
Disney World, man. It's like disturbing.
yeah. So what's different? We have lost very important pieces of our gut microbiome, members of our microbiome that have naturally provided GLP-1 mechanism that we're now providing synthetically, right? So recently we have identified bacteria that produce vitamin B5 in the gut microbiome. And this vitamin B5 naturally stimulates GLP-1 production. And so this is a natural process that has occurred for millennia, which we have destroyed basically in the last few decades with overuse of antibiotics and food preservatives. And now we are basically replacing it with a synthetic GLP-1.
Right.
So, but is there some way that we could bring those bacteria back so that we don't
Yes.
have to do the synthetic GLP-1?
Yes, yes. So, for example, in this specific case, there are known bacteria and they're available as probiotics that produce vitamin B5 that can stimulate GLP-1 production. I am sure there are many other mechanisms of natural GLP-1 production that we don't know yet. So, in the next 5 to 10 years, we're probably going to find out most of those mechanisms, and then it'll be very obvious how to balance your gut microbiome so that you do not need GLP-1.
Sounds like a good movie
I'm
theme,
I'm I'm
bringing
glad
the
I got
old
out of
gut biome back.
I got out of Lily yesterday, so probably good timing.
I'm going to say one thing here, right? I go to this gym, and actually my kid goes there. It's a pretty high end gym. They sell little bottles of pickle juice for like $8 or whatever. I mean, that's crazy, right?
Pickle juice, if it's properly done, is going to be super healthy for most people, not all people. But that indole acetic acid that you talked about earlier, that's going to be plentiful there. Indole lactic acid (ILA) that you mentioned, that's going to be plentiful in there. All of those metabolites that probiotics make in like fermented foods and that they make as probiotics in your gut, they're going to be in fermented juices, and those are going to be super healthy for a lot of people.
Why do you think that's gotten so popular? I mean, I don't mean that. The wrong way to phrase it. Obviously, like, what's
There's too
been
many
Dan?
fat
You're
people
probably
now.
around this. Why has this gotten so popular, Dan?
Because we're
There's
now,
too,
oh,
there's too many
Go
fat
ahead,
people.
Momo.
Those are
Oh,
popular.
is that it?
You just said it that there's too many people at Disney. If you go to Walmart at night, it's like it's strange seeing all the people that come out. There's
Is
just
that what your
there's just
thoughts
too
are,
many of
Momo?
us.
well, we now for the first time in human history understand the molecules that these probiotic strains produce when they ferment foods, and we
Right.
understand how essential those molecules are for our health. So you have molecules that are produced by the microbiome or probiotics in fermented foods that literally control our physical, mental, cognitive, and immune health. They are the major manipulators. It's not our genetics. And if you're missing those molecules, you cannot be healthy. And that's what we're now understanding for the first time, that it's not genetics, that it's the environment, nutrition, and microbiome that are the main factors for our health. And so now that we understand that, of course, people are wanting that.
Right. Are people in Korea then healthier than us? I mean, in theory, they eat a lot of kimchi. Is that
Well,
real or
yeah,
no?
I mean, Koreans on average are one of the longest living countries in the world.
I see. Got it. Okay.
All of those East Asian countries that eat a lot of fermented foods, like fermented vegetables, they're on average much healthier than the average human population, especially compared to like developed countries. And then you also can go to like Eastern Europe and Middle East where they eat fermented foods, but these are fermented dairy, and they have the same sort of a healthy aging. So this fermentation process is very important because it produces healthy chemicals for us. And whether it occurs in food that you consume or whether it occurs in your gut microbiome or both, ideally, is the best way to provide those chemicals to your body.
Got it.
I'm kind of along the same lines as Matt, where like I went to a Mennonite farm in the middle of Pennsylvania, and I had raw cream, just thick cream, and I could drink it straight. But I haven't been able to have ice cream or dairy for 20 years. I can't have anything that's sold on the shelf. Why is that?
Well, first of all, they add a lot of chemicals to milk to make it stabilized, right? I mean, it's just the food industry can add a lot of chemicals. I just learned recently that the food industry can add 200 and something chemicals to wine without reporting them. They basically somehow get these approval from the FDA that they can add 200 plus chemicals to wine without reporting them. And they can add many chemicals to milk without reporting them, first of all. Second of all, you don't know what cows are used for producing that milk and whether the proteins in that milk are going to have a different interaction with your immune system than old fashioned milk that our immune system or our genetics has evolved to cope with. So I would say those are all factors that we just don't understand um, that may impact how different milks affect our immune system and our reaction to it. But
So
I
Momo,
would say overall, guys, overall, milk is not a natural food for adults, right? Naturally, humans stopped consuming milk at the age of 1. So anything beyond that is sort of a wild guess. Like it could be good, but it could also be bad. We don't know.
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no,
You
I
know, Dan,
understand.
I make my own ice cream sometimes. It tastes a lot different than like the Haagen Dazs or whatever. By the way, it's, you know, it's a whole different thing. But
Yeah, but that's because it comes from between your toes, Pat.
that's the cheese, bro. So I can
No,
Yeah,
ask
it's
you,
a
sorry.
very cheese.
I got a longer question for you, Mama. Right? So, you know, I script some things, just a kind of a scripted one. Many of your customers may come from the health conscious side. How do you reach more mainstream kind of people like me or whatever, or high risk populations? You know, what are the challenges, et cetera, education, data, all that?
Yeah, I mean, it's, the population as a whole is a spectrum of people who some people do not understand at all the importance of nutrition and microbiome to human health. And that is heavily supported by the medical system because doctors are not educated at all about the importance of nutrition and microbiome in our health. And so anyone who contacts the medical system, like they go to a doctor, they will be basically told that nutrition and microbiome are not important. It's all genetic, and whether you get a disease or not, it's genetic. Now, that's been out now for many years, disproven, but doctors are probably going to take another 10 years to realize that because they simply don't pay attention to science, right? They do what they're trained to do, which is medical school and residency. Then you have people who are frustrated with the health system because it hasn't really kept them healthy. And so they go out and they read and are influenced by different sources of information. Some of those are scientific based and some others are not. And so it's just a full spectrum. So I mean, I don't know how to answer that question. We're doing digital advertising, and it's how the algorithms work and which people they're targeting. I don't understand all that. It probably changes daily, so it's hard to answer. But what I can say is that a significant portion of our customers come from outside the United States where we've never marketed, and a significant portion of customers in the United States we've never actually targeted them with marketing. So there is a growing population that understands the importance of nutrition and microbiome and understands that nutrition must be personalized, that it's not, there isn't one diet that's best for everyone. People are starting to understand that, and that's what's enabling our business to
Right.
grow.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, I just want to bring this back to the whole because it is a finance related podcast, and we have this like bifurcation of a K-shaped economy where like I'm drinking a $3 water, Matt's drinking a $3 water, and the average public is drinking Dasani, which is reverse osmosis toilet water. I don't even know what Pat's drinking because his thing's blurry.
Ralph's branded, you know,
Ralph's
purified
okay.
drinking water.
Is
No,
that
that
a
Pat's
factor?
drinking vodka, but yeah.
Is that a factor, Momo, where like people that don't have higher incomes just can't get access to the better food?
Right.
Okay, that is not the case at all. In my opinion, that is a big fallacy and big misinformation. So, I just posted on LinkedIn maybe a month ago a post saying, "Hey, there's a type of a meal called a grain bowl, and you can have an absolutely super nutritious meal that has all the macronutrients and all the micronutrients for $4 a person." There is nothing in the world out there in terms of fast food or convenient food or junk food that can match that kind of price. And the quality is a world apart. A world apart. It's like contrasting super healthy to super unhealthy. But there are many other examples. For example, if you buy bulk legumes, we're talking about lentils, chickpeas, beans, and soybeans, like tofu, for example. If you
What are
buy those
those?
in bulk, those are so cheap. It's literally laughable that I can make 6 meals. So we are a family of three, so we make dinner and then lunch for the next day. So that's 6 meals. We can make 6 meals for under $10 from these legumes. It's laughable how cheap that food is. But it
Right.
does take um, an effort for a person to say, to plan things out. So, for example, it does take an effort to go grocery shopping, to go look up a recipe. But these days with ChatGPT, there's really no excuse. No, you can tell ChatGPT, hey, I want to use red lentils tonight for dinner. Give me a recipe with red lentils that will have this many total servings. It'll have 25 grams of protein per serving. It'll have, you know, all these antioxidants, all this fiber, this many grams of fiber, and total calories per meal this much. And ChatGPT in 3 seconds will tell you exactly what to do. And you can spice it Thai, you can spice it Indian, you can spice it Ethiopian, Mexican, anything you, Japanese, anything. I've done it all. It's so simple to make. In 45 minutes, you can have a delicious dinner that costs $1 basically per meal, based out of legumes. And you can change it up every night to where you think you're eating a completely different cuisine every night for months.
Right.
But that assumes that all people are created equal. And if you're saying that all of our microbiomes are different because of how we react to different things, maybe
Yeah,
I can't have that, and maybe I can
that's
only
correct.
eat meat.
That's correct.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
That's
If
correct. So, for
if Pat
example,
and I had that, we'd get kicked out of our house.
What's that?
so yeah,
Yeah. Trust me. I
okay.
mean,
Legumes?
Hold
I
I've
on,
had
definitely,
hold on,
I'd be
my
kicked out of the
family would
house.
revolt on legumes, but
hold on,
trust me.
Matt. Hold on, Matt. So there are. Let's dive a little deeper here. So to answer Dan's question, that is absolutely true. So for example, I used to eat soybeans 3 meals a day, every single day. And then my Viome test told me that the microbial activities in my gut that are detoxifying oxalates from plants, that activity is slowing down, and that I should pull back on high oxalate foods. And so it placed soybeans in my minimize food instead of my enjoy food. However, and it also placed black beans in minimize. So all of a sudden, the computer says you should minimize soybeans and black beans. However, you can maximize lentils and pinto beans because they do not have nearly as many oxalates. And so even within lentils and legumes in general, there are differences in compositions. And Viome can go to that level of granularity where it can tell you which legumes you can eat and which ones you can't. So that's one thing. Second, to address Matt's question, many people get bloating and gas from lentils and legumes in general, but there's a very simple way to actually get rid of that. So the most important way is to soak them overnight, then you rinse them well before cooking, then you cook them, and then you rinse them again. That last step is very important. Rinse them after cooking. So those are very important things. The next thing that one can do, if you really want to, is to actually sprout them. You can take chickpeas from bulk section of your local health store. You can sprout them literally in 24 hours. It's that simple. You rinse them, you drain them, and you leave them in a bowl, and in 24 hours they're sprouting. In 48 hours, the big sprouts are going to show up. And that sprouting process not only creates more micronutrients for you, they're much healthier for you, but it reduces the carbohydrates that cause gas. So there's all of these kinds of, and we actually, in our app, we actually show you all that, all the ways. So there's many ways to handle food. All this information is out there. So like if you ask ChatGPT, hey, I get bloating from lentils. I bet you the ChatGPT is going to recommend to you these things that I just did, because this is not like some secret sauce. Like, this is known. It's just that there is a lot of information out there, but I'm saying instead of people having to look at 1,000 different sources, ChatGPT will basically just focus it on exactly what they need.
Right. Yeah.
okay, and how frequently should someone take the test? If you're saying that your body changed after having so many legumes, how frequently should someone get reevaluated, taking
Yeah,
your
yeah.
whole body
Yeah,
intelligence test?
great question. Okay, so on average, every 6 months, the microbiome changes sufficiently enough to where a different diet is needed, on average. Okay? Now, if you take a test today and then next week you go on antibiotics, you should retest a month later because the antibiotics clearly change their microbiome in a pretty profound way. If you take the test today, like when my wife and I do this, we have now shown, we're actually publishing a paper with my wife and I in that paper, where we showed that after 2.5 years, our microbiome has not significantly changed. Okay, there are some changes, and we retest every year, but it's not significantly overall change. So it depends on the question. Every 6 months, it significantly changes, meaning there are enough foods that you need to change that it's going to significantly impact your diet and nutrition. And so that's really where we should be going for. And by the way, the ultimate vision for Viome is for all of our services to be completely free to the user. We are not going to stop until that happens. And the reason that that's going to happen is that when we prove mathematically that this is true preventive medicine, anyone who is paying for your healthcare today is going to
Right.
pay for Viome because they're going to pay less for Viome than they're going to pay for your healthcare.
That's what I was saying
So,
earlier.
so
Do you have like a
self-insured
frequent?
employees.
Do you have a frequent flyer program now? Let's say I wanted to do this once every 6 months or three
We
months. Do you
do
have?
have a subscription program where you can subscribe and you pay monthly fees, and that's a big discount over paying like for individual tests. Yes.
All right, cool. So I got one more comment. If anyone has anything to add, I'm just going off some information I've read. The global human microbiome market is projected to reach 7 billion, up from 1,400,000,000 now at a CAGR of 31%. So this is a this is a real thing, everybody, for what it's worth, right?
This is a real thing
Is Viome
because
publicly traded?
it's
No, no.
no, we're still a private company.
No. It's private. Okay.
Oh, you're saying this is a real thing because I like anyone who affirms what I say, by the way. So I want to hear
Yeah,
that.
this is a
Okay.
real. I mean, you mentioned the financial projections. This is a real thing because this is human physiology that makes us healthy or sick. That's why it's real. And all financial aspects will come out of the fact that this is real. This is what determines whether we're going to age with health or with disease. The microbiome
Right.
and nutrition. Those are the biggest factors in how we're going to age. And so that's why it's going to go big exponentially.
Yeah. All right. Anything
Would you
else? Anybody?
would you say we're better off?
Okay.
But hold on. Would you say we're better off after the advent of the Industrial Revolution, or worse as a human species?
It depends on what metrics you use for that. If you look at the disease burden, we're far worse, right? In terms of chronic disease burden and cancer, we're far worse. But I mean, would you go back 100 years? Most people wouldn't, right? We love our smartphones, we love our internet, we love our airplanes and travel and all the luxuries we have today. So it just depends on the metric.
So
I meant
on that theme, though, do you think we can get better? Do you think we could be like a V shape in here? I mean, it's suddenly
Oh,
like Matt talks about this. Like
I
Matt,
mean,
one last thing. Matt
I
said
mean,
like Matt said like he reads like in 10 years from now, all diseases are going to be gone. So if we can make it another 10, you're never going to die. That's what Matt
No,
just
no,
said. Something.
not all diseases are going to be gone. I'm just saying in 10 years we'll have advances that will multiply our life expectancy well beyond what it is now if we can
yep,
make it another 10 years.
yep, agreed. Yeah,
well, that's the CRISPR thing, right? Isn't that where they zap like a gene mutation with a laser?
it's not a laser, but yeah, CRISPR enables gene editing, which means that we can modify our genetic code so that if you have a high risk mutation such as ApoE4 for Alzheimer's, in theory, you should be able to correct that mutation that you acquired from your parents, and then you have a lower risk of Alzheimer's. But plenty of people get Alzheimer's without the ApoE4 mutation, which means that you can't just eat whatever you want and not exercise and not get Alzheimer's. And so it's just an increased risk. It's not a black and white sort of a thing.
Right. Okay. Well, we try to cut it in an hour. I appreciate this. This was very informative. Thank you very much for coming on. Thanks, Dan.
Thank you
Everybody,
guys so much.
My
Yeah,
pleasure.
thanks. Remember, like and subscribe.
like and subscribe. I'm buying a kit, by the way.
All
Good
right.
for you. Good
All
for
right.
you.
All right, later.
All
See
right,
you
are we
guys.
done then?
All right.
Yep,
Bye.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank
Take
you
care.
guys so much.
later.